Games as a service is a phrase the gaming community thinks is synonymous with hell and death. It might be understandable to take this phrase as the death of single-player games or the rise of loot boxes. But the CEO of Square Enix has recently said that there's more to games as a service than loot boxes, and single-player games, at least from them, are here to stay.
In an interview with Metro, Square Enix CEO Yosuke Matsuda said the publisher is committed to developing single-player games. Now that should be music to the ears of many. Last year, Square Enix announced they were looking to invest in the games as a service business model, which started to worry fans of the publisher. It didn't help that Eidos Montreal, a studio Square Enix owns, recently announced they would focus on online gaming while the single-player Deus Ex series was put on hold indefinitely. So fans of Square Enix worried that traditional single-player games like Final Fantasy would be loaded with loot boxes going forward. But Matsuda was quick to assure fans that games as a service does not necessarily mean loot boxes and microtransactions. In fact, he says games as a service has quite a wide meaning.
Matsuda said, quote, "Recently people have been discussing loot boxes and people not using that properly. I think that's all linked to this bad perception people have to the words games as a service. But really, the way we're looking at it, what it boils down to is the idea of keeping people engaged with our games and enjoying them for longer periods of time. The way we use that expression, really, the whole idea for a single player game particularly, is the idea that you have the game released and you keep adding more content to keep players engaged and enjoying the game. That's the rough approach we take to the idea, and that's why we describe games as a service in that sense." Matsuda ended his comments saying, quote, "We will definitely be making more single player games, don't worry about that."
Square Enix's commitment to single-player games might come as a surprise to some because back in September 2017, the company said single-player games aren't as popular as they used to be during an investors briefing. But contradicting themselves in that same briefing, Square Enix said they were happy with the success of Nier Automata, a single-player game, and sales were far in excess of expectations. Nier Automata performed so well that Square Enix have already given the green light to a sequel, and they now want the series to become a major franchise. If Matsuda is to be believed, then the company will keep making single-player games and players should have nothing to worry about. Square Enix do have an awful lot of fans because of their single-player games library. They have a huge array of games that are loosely kind of fall under the same genre, a lot of them, so they have generated this kind of people who like games from that very publisher, which is not unusual, but it's quite a thing for a publisher to have its own fan base. And that's something that the company has kind of risked in the last year or so with all the talk of games as a service, the way Eidos Montreal have been behaving, and just, you know, the general sense that the fans were having about its games going forward. They were just a bit anxious. So this is going to be extremely reassuring to a huge subset of gamers who were a bit worried about this.
Final Fantasy 15 had a games as a service model applied to it, and there wasn't a loot box in sight as far as I know. I mean, they've added DLC, they've added season passes, they've got multiplayer content coming soon, a mobile version of the game, they went and fixed chapters of the game. It really was like sort of a living, breathing product rather than just a standalone game that was shipped out in December 2016 and left. So if more games from Square Enix that are single player experiences end up like that down the road, then I'm sure a lot of people will be happy with that. A lot of people that played Square Enix's Final Fantasy 15 in 2016 could play it again now and they'd see loads of differences, and a lot of them would be big improvements on what was released.
I think in some senses games as a service can be a very enticing thing, because just going back to that example of Final Fantasy 15, I do want to go back and replay it. I've already beaten the game. Rarely when that happens do I want to go back and do it again, unless it's a particularly special game. I did enjoy Final Fantasy 15 a lot, but it wasn't something that I ever thought I'd end up going back to. But now there's all this DLC, there's a really good season pass worth of DLC there. There's some changes they've made, they've reworked chapters of the game so the story is better, more focused and clearer. There's all these changes that they've made post-release that isn't annoying to me or anything. I'm not thinking, oh, I wish I'd have waited or something to play. I just feel like there's extra stuff there now. There's more things on top of the experience. So yeah, I totally feel like maybe picking up the season pass and going and have another look at the game, and that's good games as a service, and that is what I want out of it if it is going to exist.
Matsuda's definitely got a point. People assume games as a service always means RNG loot boxes and pay to open crates and things like that, and that's not necessarily the case. Monster Hunter World that came out recently is a game synonymous with games as a service as they add content after release and things like that. But there is microtransactions in there, but not loot boxes. You see, they can be different things. And so can games as a service and loot boxes. One can exist without the other. That's what he's saying here, and that makes perfect sense. So there we go then, guys. Square Enix have promised that they will still be making single player games, although they'll still be pushing forward with games as a service as well. Remember to let us know what you think of this in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new around here. We've got more content on the screen right here if you want to check out some more of our stuff. There's also a link to our Patreon if you want to support the channel. And until then, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.